And scores of commuters in Accra were stranded at the VIP bus terminal Sunday due to unavailability of vehicles to transport them to their various towns to spend Christmas with their families. Some passengers had to wait for over 4 hours before getting a bus. And of course, Accra and other cities are bustling tonight. If you're watching us from Accra, anywhere, we're grateful for your time. If you're watching us from Kumasi, we're also grateful if you are with us from Wa in the Upper West region. Thanks so much for your time. This is your show News at 10. Let's start with the big one. Beginning from here, the Dagbon Traditional Council has resolved it will resist any move that will lead to the loss of land in the creation of new regions from the northern region. This follows demands from some groups and individuals for government to carve 2 more regions out of the northern region. In a communique issued by the council after an emergency meeting, the council said it will resolve that it will not cede any part of Dagbon lands for the convenience of new regional formations. It, however, added that it will continue to respect the legitimate demands of identified stakeholders for new regions to be carved out of the northern region. Let's stay on this issue. Dr. Eric Odrosai is a governance expert and he's just joining me on the phone line. Good evening, sir. Grateful for your time with us.
Good evening and Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Now, these are certainly issues that are likely to come up with the creation of new regions. Now, how do we deal with these misunderstandings, if I can put it that way?
Thank you very much. I think the Presidential Commission of Inquiry is doing a lot of work in that direction. But as a nation, what we need to do is we have to sensitize and then raise awareness among the key actors. There is a need for us to distinguish between administrative boundaries and traditional boundaries. In fact, we should be able to understand that we have certain traditional boundaries that cuts across certain administrative boundaries. If we are not able to sensitize people and explain these to them, we will end up having these challenges coming up. I also advise the Presidential Commission of Inquiry to intensify their consultations, because they are doing a number of consultations, which is very good, but they have to intensify this. And the message for the sensitization or the consultation should be that administrative boundaries are always different from traditional boundaries, and it is possible that some traditional boundaries may cut across administrative boundaries. The administrative boundaries are created for the purpose of development and for political governance. That understanding must be properly clarified.
I see. If you say that those in charge must increase awareness, is that to suggest that what is going on now isn't enough to get people to understand the process?
Well, it is somehow enough, but I think they can do better, because you see, it involves people, and people will really have to understand what is happening, and then it will also involve people in the referendum about issues that concerns them. So I would advise them to step up their game when it comes to sensitization and raising awareness, most especially the difference between administrative boundaries and traditional boundaries. Because all these things, if you don't explain them very well, you'll get a few people trying to orient people and then explain things in a way that will not help the process. But you and I know that the creation of a region is one of the ways of deepening decentralization, deepening democratic governance, and bringing development closer to the people. It doesn't matter whether traditional boundaries cut across administrative boundaries. The most important thing is the development that we need. So I think they have to step up their game when it comes to sensitization and awareness raising on the issues.
Dr. Sai, do you also, for instance, think that some of these traditional authorities or these tribes, or if you want to put them that way, sometimes take extreme positions so that even convincing them that, well, we might be separating your people, but it doesn't mean anything, is difficult to do?
Well, it's not difficult to do. I think it's all about discussions, negotiations, and explaining things to them. This is not the first time this is happening. There are other traditional areas that cuts across regions. Between the Brong-Ahafo region and Ashanti region, we have traditional areas that falls under the Otonfo. So I think this is not the first time it is happening. It's all about explaining it to the traditional authorities and helping them to understand that the fact that we are creating a region does not imply that you are going to lose the traditional authority you have in the area. It is very important to clarify that, because apart from everything, chieftaincy institution is also guaranteed in the Constitution. So they also have a stake when it comes to national governance. So we have to give them the due respect and do the sensitization and explain things to them. And this, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry is expected to do.
What do you see are the likely, or are there any negative effects when you have traditional authorities cut into two by administrative boundaries? What are the likely or any negative effect that you see from where you sit?
Yeah, from where I sit, I will not see it as a negative thing, but I see that the fear is that if a new region is created, that new region will have its own regional House of Chiefs. And so if you have a traditional authority whose authority cuts across two regions, the representation in the regional House of Chiefs is going to be a challenge. But that is an issue that can be resolved, because we have a national House of Chiefs that would always come in to ensure that this issue is being resolved. Because if you look at the Brong-Ahafo region and Ashanti region, we have the Ashanti Regional House of Chiefs, we have the Brong-Ahafo Regional House of Chiefs, but we have traditional areas that cuts across the two regions. Yes, they are still to coexist. So I think this is it may be a negative issue, but we can also turn it into positive by ensuring that we promote development and build some consensus in the supreme interest of our people.
And finally, how do we convince these authorities who sometimes think that these things are being done and are being pushed by politicians who come from the area? How do we convince them? And how do we get these politicians who come from the area not to get involved in efforts at shifting these boundaries?
I think it's all about getting to sit around the table with them, giving traditional authorities their due respect, engaging them, and then getting them involved in the process from day one. And that is the work. That is why the Presidential Commission of Inquiry is going about consulting people. So I think that politicians should take their hands out of this, which I think they have done. The Presidential Commission of Inquiry is doing extremely well, but I think they should step up their engaging more with the traditional authorities. And once we are able to do that, the creation of the region is apolitical and will continue to be apolitical, and people would benefit from it. Because at the end of the day, we need a referendum to vote yes for the creation. So if you don't get them to understand, we need these same traditional authorities to rally the people to come and vote during the referendum. We need them to rally the people to even attend the Commission of Inquiry's meetings with them. So it's all about engagement and engagement. So I will encourage the Commission to continue to engage with the people and then explain the circumstances and how they are going to create the regions for them to understand that there is no ulterior motive. Nobody intends undermining their authority, but their authority is already guaranteed in the Constitution. Once we are able to do that, I can tell you that the traditional authorities will themselves put enthusiasm and get people to get involved in creating their regions so we can have development.
I'm grateful for your time with us. Dr. Eric Oduro-Osai is a governance expert there, talking to me on the creation of new regions. This is Newsat, and that's it for the big one. When we come back, there's more. Stay with us. Today is Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, December 25, is considered to be the birthday of Jesus Christ, which is celebrated worldwide by Christians. In this segment, we take a look at the significance of Christmas and what it means.
Christmas is an annual festival commemorating the birth of Jesus Christ, observed most commonly on December 25 as a religious and cultural celebration among billions of people around the world. Christmas Day is a public holiday in many of the world's nations, is celebrated religiously by a majority of Christians as well as culturally by many non-Christians, and forms an integral part of the holiday season. Although the month and date of Jesus' birth are unknown, By the early to mid-4th century, the Western Christian Church had placed Christmas on December 25, a date that was later adopted in the East. Today, most Christians celebrate on December 25 in the Gregorian calendar, which has been adopted almost universally in the civil calendars used in countries throughout the world. However, some Eastern Christian churches celebrate Christmas on December 25 of the older Julian calendar, which currently corresponds to January 7 in the Gregorian calendar, the day after the Western Christian Church celebrates the Epiphany.
Savior is born tomorrow, but exactly what does it mean? Let me speak to a research fellow, language, literature and drama section at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. He's just joined me via Skype. Dr. Obadele Kambon is with me on Skype. Good evening, sir. Grateful for your time.
Yes, good evening. Yep.
Now, let's start our conversation from here. What is the significance of Christmas from the religious point of view?
Okay, first we have to go into the origin of the celebration at all. So even when we're talking about the idea of a divine savior who was born, died, resurrected, that all of that is actually plagiarized from the story of Asar or Set and Heru, which is the first story of a holy trinity conception, resurrection. You can actually go to the temple of Luxor. They refer to it also as Karnak in Egypt right now, and you'll see the entire, birth sequence from the Annunciation, the Immaculate Conception, the Virgin Birth, the Adoration. All of that is carved into stone, and this exists 1380 BCE, which is, approximately 1300 plus years before the birth of so-called Christ. So what this means is that this entire story is actually plagiarized from ancient African stories about the Savior, about resurrection, and things of this nature. So if you go into the story of Heru, you'll find in the pyramid text, and we're talking about around 4,500 plus years ago, you have all of these stories about Horus having a virgin mother who conceived him, brought forth singly as one among 5 brothers. So all of these things. Now, when you come to December 25th, this is actually a Roman holiday called Saturnalia, and it was considered to be a pagan holiday. All these things of gift giving and so forth and so on, that all of them are part of this Roman holiday of Saturnalia. And it's all tied into the winter solstice, which is when the sun comes to the lowest point and the days are shortest. And what people did was that they celebrated what they call it Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, which is the birthday of the sun. So all of these things, you find basically Christian traditions. Constantine in AD 312 ended the persecution of Christians and then started to take all of these so-called pagan religions and adopt them into Christianity. And again, you can look at different texts. Gerald Massey, Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, Volume 2. He cites over 200 similarities between the lives of Asar and Heru and the life of Jesus Christ, who was born 3,300 years later. But again, all of these stories, they find their origin in ancient African texts, but many of us don't know about them. I
see. So you're saying that the stories are plagiarized, and that even
exactly.
December 25th isn't the birthday of Jesus Christ.
If Jesus Christ ever existed, he stole his entire life story from the life story of Horus, what in ancient times was called Heru. And, again, you can find over 200 similarities between their life stories. And again, this December 25th is just celebrating completely solar phenomena. So on the 21st, for those who are familiar with astronomy itself, you're talking about the winter solstice. And this is where the sun appears to be the lowest point in the sky. Now, what people did in ancient times, if you go to that same temple where you have this carving thousands of years before there was anything even thought of like a Christ, you can find this whole story. And what they did is that they aligned the temple such that on that date of December 21st, when the sun rises, it shines directly into what they call the Holy of Holies. I actually got a chance to go in there physically myself. It shines into the Holy of Holies where the statuette of Amen was. Now, at the end of your prayers, people say Amen, and they say, oh, that's so be it. No, that was the name of a deity that was also associated with this solstice. So when you say Amen, Amen Ra, Tutankhamen, people talk about King Tut, that's short for Tutankhamen, Amenhotep, that you had all these rulers who had Amen in the name. Also, you have people who talk about Yah and Yahweh. That was the name of a lunar deity in ancient Kemet as well. And what we find is that a lot of people who claim to be Christians, they really don't know that just about every single thing that they do is very much rooted in Greek and Roman pagan traditions. For example, the 7-day week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This is actually talking about Sunday as a day of the sun, Monday, day of the moon, Tuesday is Tuesday, talking about Tiu, the English Germanic god of war. Wednesday is talking about Woden, who's the root of his name means violently insane, identified with Mercury and Hermes. Thursday is talking about Thor's day, talking about the Norse god of thunder, Thor. Friday, Freya's day. Saturday, Saturn's day, and that's actually what Saturnalia, December 25th, was commemorating, and that was coming also from the earlier Greek tradition, which was Chronia, which was celebrating Chronos. So even when you look at the months of the year, when you talk about January, February, March, April, May, that all of these are names of Roman deities.
I see.
But again, because... Oh, go ahead.
Doc, so if this is a situation, then it means that Christianity has come to accept the birthday of Jesus Christ. They've come to accept Christmas. What will it take to change this? Can it be changed at all?
Well, one thing that we see from history is that there's been a lot of changing and there's been a lot of merging of traditions. So what Christianity did was basically take pagan holidays and said, okay, let's accept these pagan holidays like Saturnalia. This is where it was similar to actually the Apor festival, where you had people who were enslaved who became the masters. They could say whatever they wanted to. And it was coming from the earlier Greek tradition of Chronia, as I mentioned before. So what you have is people just taking all of these pagan holidays and then, and this even got to the point where they banned Christmas. So Puritans in England, all of these churches have actually banned Christmas at multiple times because they realized that the Christmas tree is coming from pagan traditions, that Yuletide, all of these things are coming from strictly pagan traditions.
All right.
However, they started to incorporate them into Christmas. So if you ask, well, what does this tree have to do with anything with the birth of anyone? Again, this whole birth story is talking about when the sun goes to its lowest point and then comes to the highest point, and where the days become longer than the nights. That's where you celebrate Easter. Okay. So you're talking about the spring equinox. So all of these things that we're talking about are entirely solar. And in ancient times, in ancient Kemet, that means land of the black people. That's what we now refer to as ancient Egypt.
All right.
That at that time, they didn't even say that it was supposed to be a real person.
Okay, Dr. Kambon, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. That's what time would allow us for. Dr. Obadele Kambon is a research fellow, literature, the drama section at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. They're talking about Christmas, the significance of the day. In other stories tonight, the Vice President has called on ministers and other officers in government positions to serve the people of Ghana with trust and humility. Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia was of the view this would foster peace, stability, and unity among the people of Ghana and the government. He was speaking during a visit to the Royal House Chapel and the Kanda Presby Church of Ghana in Accra.
The first port of call by the Vice President was the Royal House Chapel. He was flanked by some ministers of state and functionaries to the church. Amid songs and worship, he received a rousing welcome from the Apostle General, Reverend Sam Korankye Ankrah. The visit by the Vice President was to honor his promise made to the church in the heat of the 2018 campaign season. The Apostle General, Reverend Sam Korankye Ankrah, lauded the Vice President for his immeasurable role to Ghana's development. He promised to support government for Ghana's development.
Anybody here who has any contributions to make, anything to offer, Please, just speak this. And once you mean business, they will do business with you. This I can assure you.
Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia emphasized on the peace and stability of the country and warned those in government positions to truly serve the people of Ghana.
For us in positions of authority, we have to recognize we are only there by the grace of God and to serve the will of the people. That is all. That is all. We are there temporarily to do the will of God, which is the will of the people.
He presented a sum of 10,000 cedis and 100 bags of rice to the church. The Apostle General sought God's guidance and good health for the Vice President and government. The Vice President again made a final stopover at the Kanda Presbyterian Church of Ghana. He was welcomed by the Clerk of the General Assembly, Dr. Nyampong, and the acting moderator of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, Reverend Dr. Victor Abe. In his sermon, the acting moderator, Reverend Dr. Victor Abe, spoke against corruption in the Ghanaian society.
It is a shame that in today's Ghana, our sisters, our wives, our daughters will die during childbirth because the road leading to the hospital from the village is so bad that before they go to the hospital, the person is dead. And it points to one thing, that we are not being faithful to God who called us.
Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia was elated government's flagship programs would improve on the lives of Ghanaians.
This is what is driving free SHS, 1 million, one constituency, one district, one factory, one village, one dam. All of those things is trying to make sure everybody participates and is recognized for the resources of this country are used to benefit everybody.
Later, he presented 10,000 cedis and 100 bags of rice to the church. The acting moderator prayed for the Vice President and the government.
And that's how we're wrapping up a Christmas Eve edition of News at 10. Thanks so much for your time. The show was put together by Godfrey Tanam, Studio Director Richard Bruce Lamptey, my cameraman Christopher Soa and Echo Johnson. Production assistant was done by Hanel. My name is Bright. Have a great evening and stay right here on TV3.